Alright, so this is Bill Brock and Sara Oberle. We're here in Franconia Notch retracing the steps of the Betty and Barney Hill abduction. So what was the Betty and Barney Hill abduction?
What was it?
What was it? What happened?
Well, from what I understand, this is alleged, right? So lots has been like studied about it, but they were taken by a large UFO, weird stuff happened.
Yeah, that's a pretty good way to put it. So basically they were coming from a vacation, I think, somewhere in like New York.
Niagara Falls.
And
Montreal.
Alright, so they were heading home and they were driving on Route 3 through New Hampshire.
Yes.
They got to this point pretty close to where we are here.
Well, leading up to this point, so Betty is watching the sky and sees a really bright, bright light, that shifts around the moon from one side to the other, but moving up. So she thought it was like a shooting star just moving in the opposite direction than you might usually see it.
That is weird because it moved up, right?
Yeah, moved up into the other side of the moon, which she thought was weird. So she was encouraging Barney to stop, so she could check it out. So they did that, and also they had their pup. They had their pup with them, and the pup needed a break. So they did that just down the road here.
We are actually going to go where they first made their stop after seeing this bright light in the sky, and we're going to talk about that and actually show you what they experienced, or at least point our camera in the direction of what they experienced. And you never know, hopefully we can get a UFO as well. But yeah, today we're going to basically retrace the steps of that abduction, and I think it's going to be pretty cool. I wonder if this was the parking area back in the day.
I don't think so. I think that there's a little drive there, but it's not plowed. But I could be totally wrong.
So right here is the first spot that Betty and Barney Hill stopped, right?
Yes, right up there.
Right up there. So basically off to our left is the picnic area, but we are pretty well snowed in here. I'll give you a quick look at what it actually looks like out there. So we are pretty well snowed in, and there's no place to pull over, but in that area is where they stopped.
Well, they stopped here, and then Betty was still checking out this light, and what happened is I think it either started flashing or it started moving erratically, so she had Barney check it out with some binoculars that they had, and at first Barney seems like he was pretty skeptical. He was like, oh, it's just a commercial aircraft. But then after a few minutes, this light shifted and suddenly descended near them, and that kind of freaked them both out. So they decided to get back in the car and head south again, but this time going much more slowly and paying attention to what the light did after they left.
Gotcha. Yeah, so I would have freaked me out too.
Yeah.
Can you imagine? That's nuts. So I would think that they would have seen this object in this area because that's the only open area, right?
Right, the open sky. Yeah, otherwise you just have trees.
Yeah. So now we're going to move down to the next location down by Cannon Mountain and talk about what they experienced down there. All right, so we're here at the second location of the Betty and Barney Hill abduction site, and right here is where they saw the craft the second time, right?
Well, they've been following it the whole time, but they saw some more strange events right in this spot.
And the way I understand it, the craft actually crossed over up here. Right up there is the Cannon Mountain Tower. From what I understand, the craft actually flew across that tower. The light on top of the tower blinked out. The craft flew behind that mountain, came across this area, and came out right there. And that actually used to be the old man of the mountain, right?
It did, yes. I forget how many years ago now, maybe 4 or 5 years ago that fell.
Betty and Barney Hill really were freaked out, and they got back in their car and headed south, right?
They did. The other part that's important here too is that they got a sense for how big the craft was, because they had that cliff face as a reference for size.
And how big was it?
So that, I think, is about 40 feet, 40 or 48 maybe, and so they could see that this craft was about twice the size of that, and it seemed to them like it was rotating. Wow. I don't know if they knew that based on the lights, how they could tell it was rotating, but they got those two additional bits of information at this spot.
Nice. All right, so let's go on down to the next site.
What a cute little building, little cabin.
It is cool.
So this is our third stop on this trip today. Betty and Barney Hill did not stop here. We're actually at the Indian Head Resort. It's in Lincoln, right? Are we in Lincoln, New Hampshire yet?
Yeah, this is Lincoln.
So we're here in Lincoln, and at this point, so we've left Cannon Mountain, which is where they got this first reference to size. It blinked the light out. And at that point, I mean, this craft has been pacing them since they left the picnic area, right? So it's about 12 miles from there. So at Cannon Mountain to here, not only is this craft pacing them, but it seems to be pacing them from only a few hundred feet above the car, which I assume would just amplify feeling kind of freaked out and panicked about it. So here, once they got here along their in their travel, this was more populated, and so people described that, or they reported that they felt sort of relieved to be in a place where there's more people, and they actually would see people, like reported seeing someone shadow in like one of the cabins, and felt relieved, thinking, okay, now that it's more populated here, we might come across a police officer or someone to talk to.
Someone to get some help, right?
So either get help or someone else who will see this craft as well.
Right. Yeah, that's a pretty scary thought to think about, this UFO like basically right on their tail for 12.5 miles.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's crazy. I would have been looking for help too, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, I would have felt relieved to get to this spot too.
Definitely.
And there we can already see lots of cars and lots of people.
Yeah, it's definitely a pretty populated area. And it's also where the plaque is that talks about the Betty and Barney Hill abduction, and that's a pretty cool spot. But one of my favorite spots is another 1.5 miles down the road, and so we're gonna head down there and check that out now.
Notch Express store. Oh, first close encounter of the third kind, Betty and Barney Hill.
Isn't that great? Oh, I gotta get that. And it's your own stories up there.
Or worms and crawlers available here. Whatever.
Whatever you need, they got it.
Whatever you need.
All right, so we just made it to the next stop on the Betty and Barney Hill abduction tour. And this is actually where they first really had the most intense encounter, right?
Yes. Yes.
And so what happened?
Well, this is the point, so the craft is still pacing them really low to the ground, but this is where the craft just in front of them descended again rapidly and so close and so quickly that Barney was forced to stop the car in the middle of the highway. And he actually got out of the car.
That's crazy. So from what I understand and everything I've read, when he got out of the car, he basically turned around and looked at the craft, and it started to kind of tilt, and these weird bat wings started to like slide out from the thing.
Yeah,
right?
they were like telescoping, bat-like fins telescoping out of the sides, and then something down from the center of the craft to the ground.
And I believe he actually saw what he called humanoids at that point too, right?
He did, because he had the binoculars, so he's looking at the craft, and there must have been like a hallway, like a panel where he could see. I think what I read is it like saw 8 to 11. Yeah. Humanoid figures that were looking at him.
What I understand is like there was like 2 rows of windows on this craft, and the craft essentially looked like 2 pancakes, one on top and one on bottom, and there were double rows of windows that went all the way around this craft. And so Barney was able to look in through these windows, see 8 to 11 of these humanoid figures, and they were all like dressed in black, and then had like a black hood looking thing on, from the way I understand it.
Glossy black suits.
Yeah, so crazy, so creepy. And then at that point he freaks out, starts running back to the car.
No, wait, before he runs back, so he runs back to the car, most of these creatures walked away to this back panel, and like one remained staying, seeming to look at him, and he, like, this creature communicated to him like a message, and it was not actually spoken, it was like
telepathy?
Yeah, it seemed like what he was describing, telepathy, telling him to stay where he was and keep looking at this creature, which freaked him out.
Yeah.
At that point, and so he took off back to the car.
Wow. Yeah, and then evidently when he was either running back to the car or when he got in, he started screaming to Betty, and that he was worried that they were going to get taken away.
That they were going to capture them.
Yeah, so crazy, man. Like, that is so intense. It gives me goosebumps just thinking about it. That's it's hard to believe, but you know, he was under hypnosis. He recalled a lot of things under hypnosis that I know people still debate to this day. And like, to me, one of the really important things is how these things were dressed and how they looked, you know, as far as the humanoids are concerned. Because to me, they look a lot like the Mothman, and they look a lot like what people say the Mothman looks like. And so I've always kind of wondered if maybe the Mothman and the aliens were somehow one.
Related creatures.
Yeah, so crazy.
Same.
Yeah, it's so weird. But I want to go inside of here and take a look. I've heard that there was like some kind of weird little memorial in here for Betty and Barney Hill. So let's go take a look at what's inside.
Where's the black glossy suit?
Right, we got a problem here. He's naked.
Someone did not read the story before they painted that.
Yeah.
Looking in the street or in here.
No, it's down here.
More on the Betty and Barney Hill story in the only restroom museum in the USA. Restroom museum.
What?
First pussycat of the third kind happened outside this gas station. Read more on the Betty and Barney Hill story in the only restroom museum in the USA.
Right. So we just realized that there is a bathroom museum.
The only restroom museum in the USA. Right
So
here.
we're gonna go check out the restroom museum. This should be awesome. I would assume the museum's in there. All right, so we're in the restroom museum. This is great. So is this like a multi-person bathroom?
No.
This is just a one-person. This is not a museum. This is not a museum. I'm so disappointed.
Wait a minute. Wait, it said outside of this gas station. Is there another restroom outside?
I don't know, man. The museum has been shut down. All right, so we just came out of the Irving, which was just crazy. It was really awesome, though. It was cool to see all the old memorabilia.
Yeah, really strange.
Definitely
But cool.
was. And I was kind of disappointed about no bathroom museum, you know?
I don't know what that was about. Yeah, I'm disappointed too.
Yeah, that would have been great.
Shucks.
So what happened next with the whole abduction thing?
Well, this is where the craft sort of sped down, freaked Barney out. He saw the humanoids, the weird stuff happened on the ship, the communicated message, and so he gets back into the car, and they just tore out of here and sped down the road, and the craft followed them. I assume like they were still looking out for the craft, but Clark's Trading Post is the next spot where Betty sort of reported having looked out of the car window, looked up in the sky, and she didn't actually see the craft anymore. It was just darkness. But shortly after that, again, they're still in the car, they're traveling away at a high rate of speed, and they start hearing buzzing and beeping sounds, and then right after that the car started vibrating, and then that's a point where they report like experiencing like an altered state of consciousness, which I assume is referencing the point at which they were actually abducted by this craft and these creatures.
And then didn't they hear some more buzzing and beeping and then wake up somewhere?
Yeah, so what I read is that there was a second series of beeping and buzzing, but at that point they were 35 miles farther south from here and it's still headed home, but there was this gap between some point up here after the trading post and then that point 35 miles down the road on their way home.
Wow, that's awesome. Well, I guess that'll do it for a video today, and I hope everyone enjoyed the little tour of the Betty and Barney Hill abduction site area. The next video I'd like to do would be talk about what they experienced, maybe in more depth, and really kind of get into what really happened to them on the ship. I think that's a really amazing story. So until next time, please subscribe down below and you'll get to check out more about the Betty and Barney Hill abduction.